What's your favorite cereal for night cereal?
Whichever one is there, really.
Oh my God, I love it. Ooh, night cereal. Without knowing that that was a thing, I like know that that's a thing. So today is episode 3, my favorite day because we get to make frosting, which is my favorite part of the cake. When you're eating your slice of layer cake, the first thing that hits your palate is the frosting, so it's a really important component, not only because you want it to be silky and delicious and add flavor, but it's also insulating the cake and preventing moisture loss. Today we have 3 different kinds of frosting for the 3 different cakes that kind of go through a range of different techniques, and I'm going to walk through all of them. The world of frosting is vast, but all frostings kind of fall into a couple main categories. I have some examples here. First, on my left, I have an American buttercream, which is basically a mixture of powdered sugar and butter, sometimes with a little bit of milk added to thin it out, and this version has some cocoa powder, so a chocolate version. This style of frosting is usually very, very sweet, and it also has a property called crusting, which means that basically that outer layer, because of the powdered sugar, hardens. So you can see that I'm touching it with my finger and I'm not really creating an indentation and nothing sticking to my finger. It's very common on like a lot of homemade layer cakes. Not bad, I mean, butter and sugar. In the center, we have a Swiss meringue buttercream. The general category is like European style buttercreams. What all of these have in common is they're meringue based. The meringue adds lightness and some other substance that isn't just butter, so it's not overly rich. It also tends to have a really beautiful sheen, and unlike the American style buttercream, it doesn't crust over. So this has been sitting out for a little while and it's still nice and soft. Oh, I gotta just spit on it, sorry. Could you see that? Okay. The last frosting, I think everyone's familiar with, it's a store-bought frosting that comes in the tub. This also crusts over, so it's been sitting out a little bit, and it did start to kind of dry out all around the surface. I mean, it has a nice texture, smooth. It just doesn't taste, it tastes natural. I don't know, I don't want to say anything good about it. That's not good. It doesn't taste good. So I advocate for making frosting at home. You know, you can go kind of the easier route with American style, slightly more advanced with more technique with a European style. But I think it's worth it because ultimately it's going to taste a lot better than this one. I don't know why we have this one out here. I kind of regret it now. The frostings we're using on our layer cakes fall into the first 2 categories, and here's what they are. Our birthday cake is coated in chocolate Swiss meringue buttercream. I love Swiss meringue buttercream because it's really stable and it smooths across the cake so nicely. It's really fun to work with, and it tastes good. For our coconut cake, instead of using a buttercream, we're using just Italian meringue. Similar method of putting it together, but without butter added, and we're also able to torch it for a really cool finish. Our carrot cake is covered in very classic cream cheese frosting, which is really made in the style of an American buttercream. I love it, not only because it's easy to make, but because it has such tangy creaminess. And like if you're gonna make carrot cake and not cream cheese frosting, then don't even bother, because they have to go together. Here's all the equipment that you'll need to build your frostings. A large flexible spatula, a pastry brush, a large whisk, a candy thermometer, a saucepan and a bowl to make a double boiler, a medium saucepan, the stand mixer with both the whisk and paddle attachments. The first frosting that I'm gonna make is cream cheese frosting for the carrot cake. It's the simplest method, and it's also truly one of my most favorite things. I don't want carrot cake if there's no cream cheese frosting. End of story. Here's everything you need to make cream cheese frosting. Cream cheese, unsalted butter, vanilla extract, kosher salt, and powdered sugar. All my ingredients are room temp, which is very, very important for this style of frosting. I'm gonna start with my butter in the mixer, and I'm gonna beat that until smooth. Then while that's beating, I'm gonna add my also very room temp cream cheese. Cream cheese will whip similar to butter, but not quite as easily. You're not able to get quite as much air into cream cheese as you are butter. Don't ask me what cream cheese is. It's like a very high fat, fresh cheese. I don't know what cream cheese is really, but I love it. It's delicious. So the idea of this initial mix is to get the fats very well combined. So now I'm gonna beat in kosher salt and vanilla. So I'm gonna add a generous portion of my powdered sugar. Now to avoid a huge powdered sugar plume, I'm gonna just pulse this.
See powdered sugar
Plume.
So when I was young one time, I got out of I was taking a shower or some shit, and I got out and I had a towel around my waist, And my
I love this story already.
My sister, she was standing there with one of those bottles of baby powder,
Uh-huh.
and she thought it was closed. She thought it was closed, and she went in my face, and it went right in my eyeballs, and my insides of my eyes were caked with baby powder. Plumes, and I couldn't see. I had to wash my eyes out for like a half an hour. They were all swollen.
Wait, why is the part relevant about how you were in the shower and had a towel around you?
Well, that's how it happened.
How did she at all try to defend that it was an accident?
She said it was closed. It's bullshit. She was lying.
But then why would she have tried, if it was closed, why would she have tried
Guilty.
to...
You're going to jail, lady. Save it for the judge. But right in my eyes. So like that reminded me of it.
Okay, rest of the sugar. When you look along the top of the paddle, you can see comparatively how the color has changed. The frosting where it didn't get mixed in, that's much yellower. Okay, that's it. So you can see it was really easy. Everything came together in just minutes. There's a lightness to it, but overall it's dense, it's creamy, it's sweet, but the sweetness is balanced. It's not surprising that a mixture of butter, powdered sugar, and cream cheese tastes amazing, but it really does. Our cream cheese frosting starts with room temperature cream cheese and butter in a ratio of 2:1. Combine those in a stand mixer fitted with the paddle and beat until smooth. Then I beat in vanilla extract and kosher salt, followed by powdered sugar in 3 additions, pulsing to combine, then whip for a couple minutes until light and fluffy. Cream cheese frosting is a great starter frosting because it's basically everything in the bowl and mix. And now I'm going to move on to a slightly more advanced frosting, 2 different styles of meringue. The first one is Swiss meringue. That's going to turn into a Swiss meringue buttercream. And the second one is Italian meringue. And we're going to go over what those differences mean. Here's what you'll need to make chocolate Swiss meringue buttercream. Egg whites, granulated sugar, cream of tartar, it's a thing, kosher salt, unsalted butter, vanilla extract, and semi-sweet chocolate. Can you define meringue?
No, Claire, have we learned nothing?
You know what it is.
Meringue. Oh, okay. Well, I'll give it a shot. The definition?
Just real general.
So egg whites and sugar beaten until stiff peaks.
There you go. You nailed it.
So yeah, but I thought we were going like more technical.
No,
like the
no, you don't have to
suspension
give me the Harold McGee definition.
Okay, good.
But you're good.
All right, so I'm 1 for 1.
A plus. 1 for 1.
Yeah, you asked me to define something earlier.
We're making ganache.
Oh, excellent.
Do you know the definition of ganache?
Ganache? No.
So you're really 1 for 2.
1 and 1 was my record, is what I meant. 1 win, 1 loss.
Oh, okay.
50%.
Yeah.
If it was baseball, that'd be great.
Unfortunately, that's a failing grade. The first thing I want to do before I assemble my other ingredients and get started is melt chocolate. I want the chocolate to be melted but cooled before I add it to the buttercream in the end. So the double boiler is shallow simmering water in a saucepan with a heat-proof bowl set in top. So it's creating steam, and the idea is that whatever's in the bowl is being gently heated. Still some very small pieces of chocolate that aren't fully melted, but there's enough heat in the mixture that if I take it off and let it rest, the chocolate will finish melting as the whole mixture comes up to room temp. In the bowl of the stand mixer, I'm going to combine egg whites, sugar, kosher salt. Cream of tartar is an acid, and it's a stabilizer for egg whites, so that goes in. By hand, I'm using a whisk. Now I'm going to bring it over to my same double boiler. So the main goal here is just to warm the egg whites to the point where the sugar is dissolved. I really am just going to use my sense of touch. I can still feel that there's a little grit from the sugar, so it's not fully dissolved, and I want to keep going. As these egg whites are warming, they've become a lot more fluid, and the color has gone from kind of yellow, translucent to white and opaque. Now, I want to whip this into meringue. The sort of essential idea behind these styles of buttercream is that I'm emulsifying butter into meringue. If I were to start to add my butter before the eggs have had a chance to cool, I would melt the butter and I would not get buttercream. So I want to beat these until the eggs have fully come to room temperature. So it's only been a couple of minutes. You can see I already have a very stiff, really beautiful, super, super nice meringue. Look at that. I like this meringue for the following reasons. 1, it looks very dense. I don't see big air bubbles in it, so I haven't over-whipped it. 2, nice, firm peak. 3, very glossy and smooth. So now I'm going to start to add my butter. Again, very room temp. And I'm just waiting for each piece to incorporate before I add the next. Again, a little bit of heat left in the eggs will melt the butter. But if that happens to you, do not despair. I promise there's a fix. When you're mixing your buttercream, there's two main problems that can go wrong. The first is if your ingredients are too warm. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. The butter is a bit over softened. So you can see, because the butter was a little bit warm, it totally melted, and instead of something fluffy, I have kind of this soupy mess. I'm going to show you a quick fix to get it back to the texture it needs to be. We want to drop the temperature of the buttercream so that the butter reaches room temp and is able to whip. I'm going to use ice cubes to rub around the sides of the bowl with the mixer on. This feels like a really simple trick, but it works extremely well. You can stand the feeling of ice cubes in your hands for a long time. Okay, here is the mixture that's now been cooled down. It's room temperature, and it's become really light and airy, so it's kind of holding soft peaks. I now have to put in the rest of the butter, and we're gonna see what happens when you add butter that's too cold. So this bowl has butter that is slightly softened, but is still very cold. It's not yet room temperature. So now we have a very different set of problems. I want to show you what the texture of the buttercream looks like. It has almost a slightly curdled appearance, and that is because the butter is so cold that it's not incorporating into the meringue. So whereas the fix for too warm butter was to cool down the bowl, we want to heat this up because the butter was too cold. And I have a tool for that. This is a Bernzomatic torch, so I'm going to use this to warm the bowl as I'm mixing. I want to switch to the paddle now because the paddle is really good for smoothing out mixtures. Okay, everything has come back together. So I have now this smooth, fluffy mixture, really sort of classic frosting consistency. So the thesis here is 9 times out of 10, you might think you ruined your buttercream, but all of those problems can be fixed by just continuing to mix and letting the temperatures between the butter and the meringue equalize. So don't get discouraged if you either make soup or like a curdled mess. Be patient. You'll probably have a beautiful glossy buttercream. You can already see that we have the beginning of a really beautiful, smooth, light, creamy buttercream. Just scrape all the chocolate in. It's important at this stage that the chocolate isn't warm because I just did all this work to make this really fluffy, beautiful, smooth buttercream. And if I add hot chocolate to it, it melts the butter and then I have liquid again. We're flavoring it with chocolate, but there's endless ways that you can flavor buttercreams depending on what kind of cake you're making. So I have some examples here. First, I want to show you a raspberry version, and it's a simple process of just mixing in any flavoring that you like. You could do any jam, seedless is best. Super delicious. I kind of think it would be good with something like summertime berries. Lemon cake would be really good. Lemon and raspberry go well together. Salted caramel. Often you can find recipes that tell you just how much you want to add to a batch of buttercream. But I like to just kind of do it by sight and taste. This would be delicious on yellow cake. It'd be really good with our coconut cake. There's nothing that salted caramel buttercream would not be good on. Lemon curd. You could also enhance the lemon flavor with like a drop or two of lemon oil. I think anything with acid goes really well with buttercream to kind of cut through that richness. This is orange extract. That's what I keep smelling. This is very, very concentrated, so I'm only going to add a few drops. Orange is a flavor where a little goes a long way. It's really more of a perfume. It could be really good on like olive oil cake, anywhere that you would use lemon buttercream, so any kind of citrus cake. Espresso powder. If you want to make a coffee flavored buttercream, it's best not to add brewed coffee because coffee is water. And you don't want to add liquid like that because it can cause the buttercream to break. So just stirring in some powdered espresso is a really good way to add that flavor. I like how the bitterness offsets the sweetness in the buttercream. This would be really good on chocolate cake, even something like with mascarpone, kind of get like a tiramisu thing going on. Nutella. Nutella already sort of has the consistency of buttercream, so it incorporates really beautifully. The only thing is Nutella also is pretty sweet, so you don't want to add so much because you're adding considerable sweetness to something that's already pretty sweet. Kind of unexpected, I think, with buttercream. Really good on chocolate cake. Really good on really on any flavor cake. So once you've made that smooth buttercream base, there's really endless ways to then flavor it. So here you can see it. It can only be spread at room temperature. Once it's cold, the butter firms up, the chocolate firms up, and it's very hard, which means if you want to make it ahead, chill it and then let it sit at room temperature for a very long time. There you have it. So here's what we did to make our chocolate Swiss meringue buttercream. I started by melting the chocolate over a double boiler until smooth. Then I set it aside to cool. Then I combined my sugar, egg whites, cream of tartar, and salt in the bowl of the stand mixer and beat that with a whisk over the same double boiler until the sugar was dissolved and the egg whites were warm. Then I whipped it with a whisk attachment in the stand mixer until the meringue was thick and glossy. I added my butter one piece at a time until the mixture was smooth and light and the buttercream came together, and then I scraped in my cooled chocolate, beat that together one more time, and I had my buttercream. The base for this buttercream was Swiss meringue, hence the name Swiss meringue buttercream. The next thing I'm going to show you is an Italian meringue, a little bit more technical, definitely kind of the most advanced of the three, and that's our third frosting for the coconut cake. So here's everything you need to make Italian meringue. Egg whites, cream of tartar, kosher salt, granulated sugar, water, and vanilla extract. Italian meringue is different from Swiss meringue because we actually have a cooked sugar syrup that we stream into the egg whites, which are already in the bowl. Now, the reason this is technical is because it's a little bit of a dance. So I'm going to put my egg whites in here, a pinch of salt, and cream of tartar. So I'm going to put this in my mixer. I'm going to come back to this. And now I have my small saucepan for cooking my sugar syrup. I like to pour the water around the sides because that kind of prevents crystallization. I'm going to bring this up over medium, stirring with a heat-proof spatula only until the sugar is dissolved. I have a candy thermometer right next to me, which I'm going to use. My goal is to cook this to 238, which is just below softball. So I have about 20 degrees to go. I can't really walk away from that for too long, but I want to get my mixer going so that I can get my eggs whipping to about soft peaks by the time my sugar syrup is at temp. All right, we're at okay, we're there. We're at 238. This is where you can't really take a break. My eggs look good. These are at the stage I want them. Now, as I pour in the sugar syrup, I'm going to pour down the side of the bowl, avoiding the whisk itself because I don't want flying sugar stuck to the sides of the bowl. I'm going to add my vanilla extract now and just beat that in. This is particularly susceptible to overbeating, and in fact, it's maybe a tiny bit over. It looks a little bit dry. That's a good indicator when you've gone a little too far, that it'll go from glossy to a little dry looking. If I were to now beat in room temperature butter, I would have Italian meringue buttercream. Just like we made a Swiss meringue and added butter to make a Swiss meringue buttercream, same idea. But this in and of itself can be used as a frosting, and that's what we're gonna do. This is so useful as a frosting for cake because it's incredibly light, and it's a wonderful way to add contrast to a cake like our coconut cake that has a lot of kind of intense textures. So to make our Italian meringue, I started with my egg whites in the clean bowl along with cream of tartar and a little bit of kosher salt. Then on the stove, I combined my sugar and water, brought it to a boil, and stirred it until the sugar was dissolved, and cooked it until it reached 238 Fahrenheit. While that mixture was coming up, I started beating my eggs and I got it to soft peaks. At that time, the sugar syrup was ready to go. I streamed that into the bowl on high and whipped it until the meringue was stiff and glossy, and then I beat in my vanilla extract. Have some evening cake. It's cocktail cake. It's 5:45.
Yeah.
Wait, you guys haven't seen any of this, right?
I mean, I can't say
I mean,
haven't
you've seen it. We
this
haven't
week.
talked about it.
No.
Okay.
There's been no discussion.
I've
Okay.
eaten some cake that I found.
So this is chocolate Swiss meringue buttercream.
I mean, I love the amount of detail that you get in the swooshing, right? Where you kind of can't stop doing it.
Yeah,
right?
you can just go forever.
Making swooshes.
But that made me think of a good point, which is that it's not like a crusting frosting. So sometimes when you let
A crusting
it doesn't crust. I don't know if that's a real term.
No, I know
But it
exactly
doesn't
what
crust.
you're talking
Gets
about.
that.
It hardens
Uh-huh.
when
You
it's
can
exposed to
poke
air.
it,
This
right.
you can kind of keep forever and ever, which is good for people who want to practice their frosting technique.
Or if it's therapy.
Okay, so the second one, the frosting is Italian meringue. I over whipped this one a little bit.
I'm just curious, how can you tell? To me, that's
I noticed
tasty.
it's a little bumpy.
Yeah, see how it looks a tiny bit curdled?
A little grainy.
It's a little matte.
Uh-huh.
I went past the shiny phase, so it looks a little dry.
Uh-huh.
It's not crazy over whipped, but it doesn't peak that easily. It should peak really
And
easily.
It's crumbling a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of.
Wait, does this have butter in it?
No.
No,
This is the only one that does not have a fat.
correct.
Reason
Fat-free.
why.
I mean the cake and the filling are not
Right.
fat-free or gluten-free, but that's all right.
Seems sweeter than that one. Right?
Definitely. Okay, moving on. Third cake,
Oh, my favorite.
carrot with cream cheese frosting, buttered cream cheese powdered sugar. That's really it.
Is there a magical ratio between butter and cream cheese? Like, is there a
Yes.
proportion?
Well, I like 2-to-1 cream cheese to butter.
Like, what would happen if you used all cream cheese?
Yeah.
In terms of the texture.
Oh, I think you wouldn't get the same like lightness. It doesn't whip as well as butter.
And then, what if you used like fresh cream cheese instead of Philly?
It has to be Philadelphia. Well, this is fun.
It's perfect.
It's just got you guys to eat a lot of cake at 6 o'clock on Friday night.
Perfect.
Do you guys have dinner plans?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
I'm going-
you pre-gamed it. Do you want like a little road frosting?
A roadie.
Yeah. For your commute or
workout?
something. Yeah, for your workout. I do feel much better after having made all these frostings. Okay. So it only took us 3 episodes to get here, but we finally have all of our components ready to go. All of our layers baked, all of our fillings and soaks ready to go, and now all of our frostings. So stay tuned for the next episode where we put everything together.